Book 101 review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is an spiritual coach and, of course, an artist. No other than Miss Morgan Boszilkov.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Morgan, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a spiritual coach and an artist, and I have such a crazy journey that has led me from darkness to light. And I'm glad to share anything that could help inspire others on their own journeys.
Yes, indeed. Miss Morgan Boszilkov, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. And today, let's talk about spiritual coach using the surfing metaphor. How did you develop the surfing metaphor for spiritual growth and why does it resonate so deeply?
Well, I was trying to describe to someone once what it was like before I had begun my spiritual journey, and now how I use the tools that I've learned after I'm on this path. And the best way that I could describe my experience before um, I had first taken psychedelic mushrooms, which woke me up for the first time, the way I could describe it was being in the churning of the waves. When you're out in the ocean and the waves are crashing, and you can get stuck in a wave and you don't know which way is up, and it's hard to breathe. You don't know when the experience is going to end, and you're in survival mode. And so that's how I spent most of my life, in that survival mode, suffering, not knowing a way out. And then as I began my spiritual awakening, it's like I stood up for the first time and realized that the waves had been knee deep all along. So that's how it started. I kind of had this image in my head of being stuck in the water and equating that to my experience before I started my spiritual journey.
Indeed, the enlightening. Miss Morgan, what makes surfing the perfect analogy for a spiritual journey compared to another metaphors like climbing a mountain or scaling or sailing?
Oh, I bet there are some really great metaphors related to those too. Um, to me, they're, and I love metaphors because they really just let us visualize or like get into our sensory experiences and relate things to our real lives. Um, and the surfing metaphor for me is beautiful because it reminds me of. Because the next steps for me are, once I stood up and I saw that there was an entire ocean, and I started getting the tools that I needed to start riding the waves, um, surfing the waves, right? And then
Yes.
sometimes I would crash again and I'd be stuck, but I would have this awareness that I could get out of the wave and start surfing again. And then eventually go beyond the breakers and learn to float in the ocean. And then, even more importantly, the knowing that I am the ocean, that we are all the ocean. So, the surfing metaphor is so beautiful because it relates back to the spiritual teachers of the past that have said that we are just a drop in the ocean of consciousness.
Indeed, floating
Yeah.
people. And Miss Morgan, how do you define
That's
catching the wave in a spiritual context?
mm, that's a really great question, and no one's ever asked me that before. Um, I I think that when you're standing up and watching the waves come in, the way that metaphor plays out in daily life is slowing down enough to be aware of when things are triggering our egos. So we can see something coming and we know that, oh, there's something that might have taken me down in the past. There is something that is coming my way. I can see, oh, that's a big wave, or oh, that's a small wave. Like, I know this is a small trigger for me, or oh, this thing has like crushed me in the past. But now I have the tools that I need. I have the support. I have the inner awareness, the self love to ride that wave when I see it coming and like follow the ups and the downs. Um, and there's a sense of empowerment versus being stuck in the wave and being crushed by it. Because one of the greatest parts of becoming more aware and slowing down in life is knowing that everything is happening for us instead of everything is happening to us. So when we see a wave, it's an opportunity to use the tools that we've accumulated in our spiritual journey to even possibly enjoy that opportunity to learn more about ourselves and ride the wave of life rather than being crushed and feeling like a victim of the circumstance.
Very well said, Miss Morgan. Beautifully articulated. Very well said.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the spiritual practice. How can
Mm,
someone recognize when they are in the flow spiritually, like a surfer riding a wave?
I love that question. You have such great
Thank you.
questions. I really
Thank you.
appreciate that. Um, how can someone tell when they're in the flow, right? Well,
Yes.
I feel like there's a sense of difference, right? There's a contrast between past experiences with the same trigger. And when we slow down enough to become aware, and so often that has to do with allowing ourselves to feel the feeling rather than being swept up in the emotions or the thought patterns that have taken us into the crushing wave in the past. When we notice it and we allow ourselves to experience it, and we are witnesses to the experience. And even if it's overwhelming and it's really big, we stay with it rather than numbing ourselves or avoiding it. Or, if we're trying to run out of the ocean because there's a wave coming, it's more likely to take us down when we stand and we grab our tool and our surfboard and we're like, I'm going to ride this feeling. I'm going to, ride it out. I'm going to take these tools, whether it's calling a friend, meditating, moving the body, getting into the body and seeing where the sensations are showing up, because so often we've detached from our physical body through our survival skills. So, whatever the tools are that are resonating at the moment, we know we're in the flow when we're handling it differently, when we're not avoiding it and we're not numbing it, we're writing it out and we're staying aware of how we are experiencing it and realizing that we're learning something about ourselves.
What does wiping out represent in a spiritual transformation, and how can recover gracefully?
Yeah, I have like the wipeout sound going through my head right now. um,
Wipeout.
Wipeout. Yeah, it happens to everyone. And, sometimes I think there are times when no matter how prepared we are, no matter how many surfboards we have, no matter how many times we've ridden the waves or floated beyond the breakers, there will be tsunamis, right? Like there will be hurricanes. There will be times when we haven't um, completely noticed all the parts of ourselves that are going to be triggered. There are always new things that we're learning about ourselves. So a wipeout could be being swept up into an old pattern that is maybe triggering us in ways that we thought we were done with. Like, oh my goodness, haven't I learned this lesson so many times? And then the universe says, there's more to learn from this pattern. It's an opportunity to dig deeper. And oftentimes, I think a wipeout is a way for us to realize there's an opportunity to surrender, right?
Yes.
So when we feel like we need to control the outcomes and the environment, we're no longer riding the waves. We're no longer floating. We're trying to control the ocean. So wipeouts often teach us to surrender, right? Because when we've wiped out again, and we realize that like surfing is a possibility and floating is a possibility, rather than experiencing like guilt and shame and putting ourselves down, we can just like ask for help, right? There's like this the sense of higher power and surrender and saying, I let go. I let go, I surrender. Please help me, right? Whatever you might pray to, or really true big wipeouts land us on our knees. And I know for myself, when I've been on my knees from circumstances in life, I've automatically just gone to asking for help. Even when I was an atheist, I was like, someone, something, please help me. And just that act of giving up control, like I can't control this, I give up, you know, releasing control and surrendering puts us back in the flow. That is one of the greatest tools that we have to surf and float again.
Yes, indeed. I totally agree with you, Mr. Morgan. How do you balance effort and surrender to wave carry
Mm.
you on a spiritual path?
How do I balance
Effort.
surrender? Oh,
Yes,
and
and
effort.
surrender. Yes.
Oh, I think effort has more to do with self discipline and integrity because we have no control over anything in our lives except for our response to life, right? So people are using the word responsibility in that way, where there's like a hyphen between response and ability. And so the effort that I exert, um, if I'm in surrender, my effort is put into focusing on my intuition, noticing my body, listening to what might be coming in different ways. So, for example, if my solar plexus is burning, right, it's more important for me to listen to my body and the way that my solar plexus is trying to communicate with me than for me to try to exert my control in the external and force things to happen the way I think they should happen, right? Rather than getting caught up in the shoulds and like pushing and working and striving and trying to make something happen, I get farther personally by listening to my body listening to my intuition and tapping into the ways that I connect with the divine, whether that's through meditation or going into nature. I can let go of the striving and focus on my own response to what is flowing through my life without trying to control anything external.
Miss Morgan, again. Very well said. Beautifully articulated. Let's talk about the challenges and growth. How do you navigate periods of flat water when it feels like no spiritual waves are coming?
Ooh, that is a really great question because I am naturally a doer. Um, I I have to work on resting, right? I think that it's been part of my conditioning personally, and I know that much of the Western culture um, is conditioned in a similar way, where we're always trying to do more, be more. Like you said before, efforting, right? And when things are still and quiet and triggers aren't rolling in, there's a sense of restlessness that I myself experience. It feels like I need to be more myself. And I know now through enough psilocybin and ayahuasca that one of my core self limiting beliefs is not enough, right? So, that ties into unworthiness and insecurity and all of those fears that underlie all of our self-limiting beliefs. They make us uncomfortable with stillness and calm because there's this gritty discomfort with rest and quietness, because my ego, at least, is always telling me I'm not enough. Even in my spirituality, my ego says, can you be more? What else can you learn? What else can you do? So I am learning to appreciate the stillness and know that the stillness is always teaching me as well, because my ego is present always. And I can pay attention to my ego's reaction to the stillness too. And that in itself is something to learn.
It's something to learn for
Yeah.
sure. Miss Morgan, in surfing, every wave is unique. How does this apply to personal transformation?
If every wave is unique, I think I have a feeling that the uniqueness of the waves has more to do with our own evolution than the wave itself. Because as we are all evolving, in the same way that we look back with regrets, right? The only reason why we ever have regrets is because we have evolved. So, given the same wave, if you will, today, as I might have had 5 years ago, that wave will look different to me today than it did 5 years ago. I will have a unique experience today, because when I look back at 5 years ago waves, of course I have regrets, but that's only because the me now wouldn't handle them in the same way. Like, regrets are so beautiful because they point to our evolution. So to me, the waves aren't necessarily unique. It's just because we are evolving them. We're always seeing them in new ways.
Yes, indeed. We are evolving as a human, people. So much Morgan, as an artist and a
Yeah.
spirituality coach, what will be your short term and long term goals?
Well, I am writing a book right now, which is a little bit um, daunting because as an artist, my art just flows through me. It's easy, it's natural. I feel like I've gotten to the point where, I do a lot of murals. I can walk in and I just put something on the wall and I'm quick and I flow and I channel and it's great. And this next chapter where I'm writing a book, I feel like I'm starting all over again, but I know that it needs to come out of me. Everything in my life keeps pointing to this new chapter. So for me, bringing more love and the awareness of the love and beauty within every single one of us, bringing more of that awareness to the world is my long term goal. I want to be and share that love.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Morgan. And what will be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be an artist as well as an
Mhm.
spirituality coach?
Well, as an artist, I would recommend that everyone tap into their creativity, no matter what it might be. And so many people will come and tell me, oh, I'm not creative. I'm not an artist. I can't do what you do. But I think that might be missing the point because we are all artists in the fact that our lives are our art, our lives are the creation. Just like we are evolving, every day we're doing something new. We're taking what's present, the raw materials of our life, and transforming it on a day to day basis. No one is doing exactly the same thing every single day. Even if it just means they're having different dreams every night, there's something that each person is creating in their lives. So, tapping into whatever that might be that sparks people's interest, that feels creative, that is an expression of the creativity of life itself. And as for spirituality, anything that you can do to bring more awareness to ourselves, right? So, how does my ego show up? The Enneagram is excellent, excellent for mapping out an ego and getting to understand what our triggers might be and noticing in our daily life, like, I notice that that thing that is part of my ego map is showing up for me now. Byron Katie has amazing, you asked me earlier if I recommend a book. Byron Katie's book, Loving What Is, has been transformative for me, as has Eckhart Tolle's The New Earth. But Byron Katie has worksheets and podcasts, and it's really accessible the way she walks people through letting go of judgments. So maybe those two things, Enneagram and Byron Katie.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much for your recommendation and, well, for your advice and looking for your book to be published.
Mm.
And please do come over and let's talk about it on Book 101 Review. Let's talk about the practical application, Miss Morgan. What's one daily practice to help us stay balanced on the board
Mm.
spirituality or spirituality?
Yes, I love that because when it comes down to it, all we have is every moment. And I know there's a lot of talk about gratitude, right? So it's a
Yes.
big word and it's so often referenced because it is so important. And I think that there's a big push right now to inspire people to manifest things in their lives. So, one of the things that I do right now is every time I find myself wanting something more or different, I ask myself, how am I taking care of the things that I already have? How am I grateful for the things that I already have? Right? Because as a parent, there are times when my children will ask me for something new. Right? Let's just say some one of my kids says, "Mom, I need a new, jacket or a pair of shoes or something like this," or whatever it might be. And I might say, "Well, you already have X, Y, and Z that fit you or that are good." And and I can I am reluctant as a parent to get the kids something more when they're not even appreciating and using the things that they have. So if I extrapolate that parent metaphor to the universe, right? Why would the universe give me more if I'm not even taking care of what I have now? And that includes my body, right? So, how am I taking care of my body and being grateful for all the parts of my body that do work? So, rather than focusing on, the parts of my body that I don't like, let me fill my body with like, thank you for my toes, thank you for my ankles, you know, thank you for the food that I do have. Thank you for the home that I do have. So, being grateful for and taking care of and being in integrity with myself for the things that are already in my life rather than wanting all of these friends or connections. How am I taking care of and being in gratitude for the friends that I do have and the family that I do have before I ask for more? Because I think that when we are showing the universe that we are being in integrity with ourselves and being in gratitude with what we already have, it attracts more.
Indeed, stop complaining, people, and count your blessings. Count the blessings that you had, and for sure you
Mm.
will be happy for it and you will not complain. And Miss Morgan, how can someone who's never served physically connect with this metaphor?
I'm sorry, do you mind saying that again?
How can someone who's never served physically connect
Oh,
with this
never
metaphor?
served.
Yeah.
Yes. Ooh, I like that so much. Right. So, okay. Well, even if someone hasn't served, another metaphor that I use is the nightmare, waking up out of a nightmare, right? When we're
Yep.
in a nightmare, there's no sense of being in it. But then as we're waking up, and sometimes there's a sense of like waking up briefly and then falling back into it, and then waking up and falling back. And there's like a transition if you're coming out of it. Once you have an awareness that you're in the nightmare, you know that there's a way out, right? You know that you can, like, there's a sense of, that wasn't real, right? Just like if you stand up in the ocean, you go, oh, there's a whole ocean here. Being stuck in the wave wasn't the entire like experience of the possibilities of life. Being in a nightmare isn't the entire experience of the possibilities of being awake or dreaming or all of things. I don't know. I do feel like most of my life I was in a nightmare and I didn't know how to get out. I didn't even know I could get out. And then once I started to wake up, I was like, oh, oh, that was a nightmare and I didn't even know that I was in it. So that might be another way to relate to that.
Indeed, Miss Morgan. But before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm
Yes.
inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course my book 101 review in its fifth season too, comedy 101 in its second season, food 101 in its fifth season as well, geography 101, and love letters in third season and my baby podcast, Mental Health 101, Movie 101, Movie 101 review, and Music 101 in its fourth season, and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please do listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. Miss Morgan, if you could leave us with one surf tip for a spiritual path, what would it be?
I would say that if you can embrace change and notice when you are experiencing self-limiting beliefs, Byron Katie's worksheet and her process, and my shorthand for Byron Katie, in case you don't ever look her up, is when have I done that? So when we're out in the world and we find ourselves being triggered when a wave is coming in, we can ask ourselves, when have I done that? When we notice that we're judging someone else. So more love for others, more love and compassion and forgiveness for ourselves. It all brings us up out of the things happening to us and reminds us that everything is happening for us. And with self-awareness, we can ride the waves.
Yes, indeed. People love, love, love.
Yes.
So, Miss Morgan Boszilkov, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. We are
Thank
hoping
you.
for your upcoming book, and please do come back and let's talk about it.
Okay.
And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support your wow, I love it. I love your paintings, your painting, and as an artist and spiritually coach.
Thank you so much.
So, where do people
Mm.
catch you, Miss Morgan?
Morgan B Studio. And that's my website and my Instagram.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Morgan Boszilkov as an artist, spiritually coach, because if you support her, more and more and more paintings to come, more and more coaching to come. So, Miss Morgan, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.